Today we're jumping back to our NHL offseason plan series. Today we're looking at the 15th ranked team from the NHL's regular season, the New York Islanders. What should we expect from them this offseason? Can they get back to the playoffs? What changes will they make? We'll discuss the possibility coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're taking a look at the offseason plan for the New York Islanders. If you're new to this series, essentially we break it down to a couple of different segments here. First up, we're going to recap the 22-23 season, take a look at their record, a few key team stats, analyze any moves they made near the end of the year, whether or not they made the playoffs, how things went, just a quick recap in that sense. Take a look at where they sit from salary cap perspective, how many contracts do they have on the books, what do they have available. Take a look at any internal business they have, so RFAs, UFAs, that type of thing. And then take a look at the top burning questions facing the franchise as they enter the full swing of the offseason here. So let's dive right in and get started. The Islanders, like I said, finished 15th overall in the NHL. They did qualify for the playoffs. They get in as a wild card team, finished with a record of 42-31-9 for 93 points. They scored 243 goals while giving up 222. So obviously, as we know, the Islanders have a reputation of being a very solid defensive team that did not change this year. They had a plus 21 overall rating in that regard. Scoring 21 more goals than they allowed, but offense was still not great, being 22nd in the league in goals for, but being top 5, 5th overall for goals against. So this team obviously needs to be a little bit more offensive, but manage to keep their defensive structure. It's going to be tough to do, but that's what they're key to figure out here. The power play was one of the worst in the league, 30th overall, 15.8%. You're not going to win a lot of hockey games without being able to capitalize on your opportunities. So obviously that's a big problem that has to get fixed. But the PK's been really strong, 82.2% for 9th best. Being a top 10 team and some key defensive metrics, but being low in the offensive metrics should not come as a surprise. If you follow this team and watch them throughout the season, you can certainly see their shortcomings, and that's where things stand. But obviously, like I said, they need to figure out a way to become more offensive moving forward, whether that's a combination of how they play and the personnel that's on the ice. We'll discuss those scenarios a little bit further. Like I said, they made the playoffs. They ended up facing a really strong team in Carolina Hurricanes who defeated them in 6 games, 4 games to 2. 4 of the games were 1-goal differential, and Carolina won 2 of those games in overtime. So really, it was close, to be honest. Carolina, as much as they were strong, look at even when Carolina lost in the Eastern Final against Florida. Really tight, 1-goal games, many of which in overtime as well. Same idea. Obviously, Carolina's, like the Islanders, did have trouble scoring, but at the end of the day, they didn't have quite as much trouble as the Islanders did, so they were able to defeat them in 6 games. But it was close, and as much as you're looking at the numbers, it might seem close to what it was. At the end of the day, the Hurricanes, in my opinion, are a way stronger team than the Islanders, but the Islanders are built to have playoff success based on how they're structured defensively and how they play, with the forecheck and all that. But, they're just not as good as Carolina. Carolina certainly had the better forecheck of the 2 teams for sure, and was able to win the series. I guess what I'm saying is it didn't feel like it was as close as what some of the numbers might indicate. Of course, we just heard now from Lou Lamoriello. We have not heard from Lane Lambert. Normally at the end of the season, many coaches and GMs speak either on locker cleanout day or shortly thereafter. That did not happen with this team. No big surprise there. Lou and his secrecy continued. He said he just spoke today. We'll talk a little bit further in the later in the video about what he had to say. They did trade for Bo Horvat early, ahead of the deadline, trying to jump ahead of it. They give up Anthony Beauvillier and Aatu Räty, and they also acquired Pierre Engvall, who actually fit in nicely from the Maple Leafs and actually probably earned himself a bigger than expected contract where he's a pending UFA. Be interesting to see how things work out there. Their moves at the deadline did pay off. Horvat had a good start, but then it really cooled off. Barzal was hurt. That could have had something to do with it as well. He had all those things up and things just did not work out. There was a stretch of time there where honestly it was looking like they might not be a playoff team, but they did manage to get in. Not by a lot, though. From a cap perspective, they have 20 contracts on the books for next year, totaling $78.1 million, which gives them $5.33 million available. Assuming we get a $1 million cap increase, which based on Gary Bettman's comments, and the Game 1 State of the League address before the Stanley Cup Final got underway, then I suspect that it is going to be a $1 million increase with a bigger one to come next year. Now let's jump over and take a look at their internal business from restricted and unrestricted free agents that they have facing this team right now as we get closer to July 1 in free agency. On the RFA side, they only have 2 players. They have Samuel Boldu, defenseman, and forward Oliver Wahlstrom. I'd suspect both players will be qualified and signed. Neither of them are going to be too expensive. Wahlstrom is be a player that they'd really like to see take a big step next year. Of course, he had a serious injury and had surgery, will recover. But obviously, he could be a bigger part of the team. That would be a big help for sure, considering he was drafted to be an offensive juggernaut, and they thought he could be a real sniper, and he's yet to be that on any kind of consistent basis. On the UFA side, they have goalie Semyon Varlamov, who I do expect they're going to make every effort to re-sign. Pierre Engvall, who they picked up at the deadline, Zach Parise, Scott Mayfield, and Parker Witherspoon, who's a Group 6 free agent, meaning he didn't get enough games played during his contract that he can actually become a UFA on July 1st if he's not re-signed. So obviously none of these guys are going to be overly expensive. I mean, Parise has played on league minimum deals the past couple of years. I suspect he'll probably do it again if he's going to continue to play. I know Lou would like to keep Engvall. He did mention it, and Mayfield. Same with Varlamov. Not going to be easy to do, though, with the amount of cap space they have. So we will see. I would suspect that Engvall probably won't be able to be re-signed as much as there's interest. Without making another cost-cutting move, it will be very challenging to retain his services. I suspect that they'll be able to hopefully get Varlamov to re-sign a little cheaper. I don't know about Mayfield. He might be challenging as well. So now let's jump into the top burning questions facing this franchise going into the full swing of the offseason. Obviously, I've been waiting a few days to record this video. It worked out well because I was supposed to record this in the past couple of days, and we've had other news kind of bump this on the calendar. And then we found out yesterday that Lou was going to speak today. So I said, well, we might as well wait until Lou speaks. Maybe I'll get more information that might help with some of these questions and get a better idea of the direction and the future of this team. And to be completely honest, it really did not. We didn't get a ton of info there that was really all that helpful. But for Slade Lambert, it will be back as the head coach. We do know that. He confirmed that himself and Lambert both under contract and that they're going to be Islanders next year. There was some talk that Lou was in the following year of his contract, but maybe he was extended because of his level of secrecy and privacy. We don't really know always the full extent of his personal contract in that regard. So that much we do know. There was some rumors about maybe Lou going into a president role and another body being brought in to be the manager, but that doesn't seem to be the case. At least he didn't indicate that until today. And considering how late into the off season for them, they've been off now for like 40 plus days. They haven't made any kind of move so far. I'd be surprised if that does happen, but you just never know. Obviously, as far as the big questions go, that was the big question. Number one to me was who's leading this team behind the bench and in the front office. And it looks like there'll be no change except for maybe a coaching change on the assistant coaching side. That's possible. Lamoriello would not be fully committal to all coaching staff members returning. So maybe they shake up the assistants or something like that to try to get somebody else, especially somebody who can run a better power play. That would be good because that's obviously a big thing that needs to be worked on for the Islanders this year. Goaltending is a big question mark. Obviously, Ilya Sorokin can be extended. He's a world-class goaltender, a big part of this team. So getting him extended would be good, and determining if Varlamov is going to return as the backup would be good as well. I mean, obviously, they need a second goalie. Varley's a UFA. Obviously, we know they brought Varlamov in largely due to the fact that it helped Sorokin being a fellow Russian. He could help him get acclimated to being in North America, help with any language issues, things like that. They were very strategic all those years ago when they suddenly moved on from Robin Lehner after a remarkable season and bringing in Varlamov. I mean, at this point, at the time, it seemed like a shocking move. Now looking back and seeing all the, what Lehner's been through, obviously it has worked out pretty well, I must say. Varlamov's been good for the Islanders. Lehner's been good at times too, but has had major injuries and things to deal with off the ice. So clearly they could have had an impact, but obviously determining both of their contract statuses will be huge. I would suspect a Sorokin extension will be high on the priority list. And I think they're going to make every effort to see if they can get Varlamov signed, hopefully for maybe if it's only 1 or 2 years, but a much cheaper amount than he was being previously paid will be helpful. No need to change anything if they can agree to terms with them. Obviously, like I said, they need to find some more cap space, so I suspect that Josh Bailey will be traded or bought out. He did make mention today that obviously, there's a lot of loyalty there with Bailey being a longtime Islander, but he has to do what's best for the team and acknowledge that Bailey could be nearing his time coming to an end as an Islander. So I suspect that's going to happen. A buyout would save them over $2.3 million on the cap. Obviously, a trade could be even more. Let's say, unless they have to retain some money, but they can get $2 to $3 million savings at least by moving him, if not maybe more, depending on how they work it out. If they gives the full cap hit off and have to add an incentive, that might be an option as well. But moving Josh Bailey to gain that flexibility is vital, and they have to do it or they're going to have a difficult time. Always, like I mentioned before, they really need to add another top six forward. Hard to say who they target, but they have, obviously acquired Horvat. They have Barzal. Lee and Nelson are still fairly productive. Kyle Palmieri has not played like a top six forward consistently. Neither has Pageau. They need somebody else who can step into those roles and contribute. I mean, Wahlstrom, will he be able to do that this year? You hope, but you don't know for sure. You need competition there. Will they if they can free up the space, would they target a guy like a Tarasenko, who's now a UFA? There was some interest there before. I'm curious to see if that might be revisited. Obviously, they could use a little bit of help on defense, especially if Mayfield leaves. They have questions to make. I think their top four of Pelech, Pollock, Romanov, and Dobson obviously are probably pretty much intact. I don't really expect any changes there. But then, of course, you have Boldu, who kind of proved at times late in the season and in the playoffs, and he's not quite ready. So I don't know if they trust him to be a full-time member next year. You get Mayfield, you get Sebastian Aho. It's really hard to say. I wouldn't be shocked if they go into either the trade market or the free agent market and bring in at least one defenseman. I know somebody like a Ryan Graves, for example, I think would be a terrific addition back there. But there's certainly going to be some competition for his services. I think he'll have a lot of interest. But that kind of player, if he's available, would be somebody I would suspect that Lou will be talking to trying to make an addition. Obviously, they really missed Devon Toews the past few years. Of all the moves that Lou made when they were doing cost-cutting measures, that certainly is one that I think is going to come back to haunt him, giving away, I think it was 2 second-rounders for Devon Toews. Look what he's done in Colorado, working with Cale Makar. Absolutely travesty that they had to lose him. But at the time, I don't know that they could have really predicted that he was going to be that kind of player by moving on. But we'll see. I mean, he will be a free agent in the near future as well. I wonder if they ever revisit trying to bring him back. But that's not for right now. That'll be for a little bit down the road. So let me know what do you expect from the Islanders? What is Lou going to do? This team needs changes. They can't just run it back as is with a couple of minor tweaks. This team is getting older. They're getting slower. They need an injection of scoring. They need to start mixing in more youth. They don't have a lot of prospects who they can rely upon to have a big impact next year. Wahlstrom's not really in that category anymore. They do have a few interesting young players, but I don't know that they're really ready to have that, at least not a major impact. So they need to get this figured out, or this is going to be another mediocre at best season where they might maybe be able to squeak in as a wildcard team at best. And if it wasn't for their goaltending, even that would be a challenge. So let me know what you think this team needs and what Lou will actually do down in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.